Hi, this is knittingbrow, and I posted a question on Plurk and Twitter about topics you'd like me to discuss on the blog. And so M. Shushita asked how to tink back in both knit and purl, and Rowan asked where to put the needle when tinking. Well, I'm going to show you that. Now, tinking is just knitting backwards, and actually tink is knit spelled backwards, and tink is great for short amount of knitting and pulling back your knitting. As you get more experienced, you can tink all types of knitting, including cables and lace. I find it best to tink when I have good lighting and I'm not tired. And so what you're doing when you tink is you are just putting the needle into the knitting of the row below. I think you can see that there. And so what I do is I knit continental, so I'm going to go backwards, and I'm actually going to pull this down a little bit. So I went in here, and then I'm actually just going to slide that off. And then I'm going to do it again, go into there. And so all I'm doing is I'm just putting the needle in the row below, into the stitch below, and pulling it off and back onto the left needle from the right needle. So here's that, one more knit stitch. There we go. Now with the purl is the exact same thing. You can see the row where I'm going to go for the purl. I'm going to go in here, and so I'm going to go into the front of that like I normally would, and then I'm just going to slide it off. See how that goes? I find this is actually pretty easy. It does take a little bit of concentration, and don't worry about it stretching a little too much, because what will happen is when you block the piece, it'll level itself out, it'll even out. So that's the last purl, and then I'm going to go into another round of knits. Now this is small yarn on a large needle, so you can see that. So there we go. Now, if for some reason I decide to go in this way, which is through the back rather than to the front, see that? See how that goes? I think there we go. And what happens is the knit stitch is actually on the needles wrong. You can see that here. What we have is we have the left side of the stitch toward the front of the needle rather than the right side. There are two ways to fix this. The first, which is what I use usually, is to simply go into the stitch into the back and then knit it off. And when I knit it off, it actually lays correct. See how that lays correct? Now the other thing to do, it would be to, I've done this a couple of ways, just basically take the needle and move the stitch back. Do you see how I did that? Okay, we have that's wrong, and then I'm just going to twist it and put it right back on there, and then knit it normally. Now, what would happen if I do that incorrectly? Let's see. Well, if I were to go into this stitch, oops. If I were to go into this stitch that is on the needles wrong, if I were to go into that, it's actually going to twist the stitch. Do you see how that is twisted right there? We have right there, we have that is twisted across here, whereas here we have that nice little V-neck, as I like to call it. So that's where I would want to tink, and then I'd want to go into that correctly. So that's how you do some fixing. That's how you tink. Bye.